Welcome back everybody. Today's video I'm going to be working on some turkey feather art. Today's turkey feather art is a little bit different than a normal project. It's going to be featuring one large piece for just the fan with no body feathers, and then four smaller pieces featuring the two wings and some body feathers. So today I'm going to give you a little DIY tutorial on how I'm building those smaller frames for the body feathers. So to start, you're going to need one of these 5mm sanded plywood boards. They come in a 4-foot by 8-foot section at Lowe's, and they can cut them into smaller sections for you. A sander is optional, but I definitely like to sand my pieces to make them look nice and finished. You will most definitely need a skill saw and some type of marker or pencil. Got your supplies. You want to decide exactly how big or small you want your smaller frames to be. So I'm doing mine approximately 14 by 10 inches. I measured and cut my 5mm board. And then after I cut the board, then I'm going to sand the edges to make sure that they're nice and smooth. So the next thing I'm going to do after I've sanded my boards is I like to paint my boards to make sure that when you put the feathers on, sometimes they can be a little bit translucent. And so that black background just kind of makes the feathers pop off the board a little better and hides any cracks in the feathers or any transparency in the feathers that you might see. Okay, so now that our backboards are all painted and dry, the next step is going to be to decide how you want to design your feather arts. So I recommend definitely spending a good amount of time on this next process, making sure that you work the feathers how you want them, take a picture, set them aside. You can start by organizing them into bags. So what I've already done, and I've pre-bagged my feathers. So I have my wing feathers, then I have my darkest feathers, and then I have feathers that these still have the down feathers on them. These are extras that I thought weren't exactly perfect. If I need them, I have them, so I don't throw any feathers away. And then we have the feathers that have then these are kind of just our generic body feathers, and then we have the feathers that have the black tips on the end of them. Okay, so one of the first things that you need to do once you have all your feathers sorted is go ahead and separate the feather and these down feathers, and go ahead and snip off all your down feathers until you just have a perfect feather. The down feather from all of your feathers is going to be very time consuming. It can take me usually a couple of hours to do an entire bird, but it's definitely vital to making sure that all your feathers lay flat on your backboard. Then you want to start by organizing your feathers into either different bags, bowls, Tupperware, whatever works for you. I would highly recommend doing that. And then we can go in and start designing our feather art. So I'm going to spend a little while figuring out exactly how I want to design my feather art, and I'm going to come back to you once that's done. I've spent about an hour or two going through and deciding how I wanted to design this particular piece, and then I've separated them into a couple different piles and mapped out on my backboard using a carpenter's pencil what I want my design to look like. And so the next step is to take our glue, and we're going to start applying the feathers. I definitely recommend having some type of small set of tweezers. I'm using a little set of lash tweezers, but any set of tweezers will do to apply the feathers. As you can see, like, everything is going to get very sticky, and if these down feathers are not removed, they will be glued to everything. You'll want to be nearby a sink and have lots of soap on hand, because I like to wash my hands every couple of rows in order to get some of the glue and tackiness off my fingers, as to not mess up any of the feathers. row, I went with these really dark body feathers. You can find them on the back of the top of the back of the turkey. And then I think for my next row, I'm going to go with the lighter body feathers with the black tips. And then I'm going to segue into some of the fan feathers. One of the most important things to remember when you're doing this is that it is completely customizable. You can design this and choose whichever feathers you want. If you're wanting to get into feather art and you're worried about tackling a really big project, these smaller boards are a great way to start designing feather art and getting familiar with how to lay the feathers, how messy it can be, and really start to finesse the actual art of it. So 10 out of 10 recommend starting with a smaller project like this, and definitely organization and prep is key. So let's go ahead and move on to our next row.
I have already filmed this, but I filmed in S&Q mode, and I'm not sure if that's going to be salvageable. So, I'm not sure. Does anyone else who films feel like let's just remove S&Q from every camera? Just get rid of it. Anyways, I finished this one last night, and I had planned to show you. I like to build my frames first and then attach them to the backboard at the end. So typically what I would do is, what I wanted to show you, I'll put a frame on here, just take a pencil or a white marker, and then I like to edge out exactly how much room I need to take up on the board with the feathers. And then I attach the frame when I'm all finished. We'll see if I can salvage any of that. And as you can see, I'm already halfway done with this board. So to start with, I know it looks like kind of a crazy mess now, but I had organized my feathers into feathers that had the least amount of black bar on the tips, which is what I started with, and then fade that into feathers that had a small black bar, a thin black bar, and that kind of is this middle section here, fading into the sections with some of the biggest black bars. And then that is going to fade into the feathers that have the largest black bars and are the darkest on the bottom at the very end of the board. So we're going to measure, cut, and then paint the frames, and then we will attach them to the backboards. So for this part, you're definitely going to need if you don't have one, Milo's will do 3 cuts for free, and then they charge you for additional cuts. Or if you have a spouse or a friend that could help you out, they may be able to cut these pieces for you and get the last 2 frames built. 12 3/4, 14 1/2. Voila! 1. Whoops. Who let me pick out this piece of wood? Okay. Time for assembly. Now we want to take these pieces and we want to fit them together so that they are actually a frame. And then after we fit them together, I like to sand down the edges. If you are a man and you're feeling insecure in your masculinity, or you want to be a little misogynistic, now would be the time. Jump in the comments. Let me know how you would do this. Let me know how I could do it better. And then I'm going to do it this way. I think my battery's dying. All right, we'll come back and tighten those down in a minute. Let's do the top. Okay, so once the frame is built, then I like to just take a sander and kind of sand these edges a little bit to make sure that they look really smooth and connected. I will go ahead and paint the whole frame, leave that out to dry for a little bit, and then the last step will be to attach the actual feather art to the frame. So let's go ahead, finish our second frame, and I'll catch back up with you when we're done. The last step here is to paint, depending on what look you're going for. You could paint your frames, you can stain your frames, you can do a combination of both. So for this project, I'm using a completely flat black. Obviously, flat black is a little bit more difficult to clean as opposed to like a satin or a gloss or a semi-gloss. That's the look that they asked for, was a flat black, matte black look. So that's what we're going with. So let's go ahead and get these two frames painted. Last thing I'm going to do is attach the feather art, the backboard, to the actual frame, and then we are done. Alright guys, that's it for this DIY tutorial. I really appreciate you guys following. This is definitely a really good way to get into feather art if you're a little intimidated by doing a really large piece. If you've got some extra body feathers, this is a great way to start off. So head over to Brittany Jean Outdoors on Instagram, give that a follow. And if you try this tutorial at home, make sure you tag me in your pictures. I'd love to see them, love to share them. And if you like this type of DIY tutorial, then definitely stay tuned because I've got a large Miriam project coming up that I'm going to film as well in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Please hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time.